Hello everyone, this is Mike. Welcome to my channel, Mike the Tech Savvy. In this video I will review the Pixel 4a device, which is a device I've been using for the last month, I guess, and it really made an impression on me. I quite like the device, I'll have to be honest from the start, but this review will be a very honest one. I will discuss about all its pros and cons and its major features. So let's get started. Right off the bat, I can tell you that the device is quite compact. You do have a pretty small body, 144 millimeters in length, 69.4 in width, and just 8.2 millimeters thickness. You do have a plastic body and frame, and even though this is the case, I never felt that the device is, less rigid because of it. Indeed, I have seen Reddit posts and YouTube videos where this device creaks and does a lot of weird stuff. Mine doesn't. It's quite solid, I might add. And I do feel that because of the fact that it has a plastic construction, it's also much lighter, only 140 grams, compared to its, flagship brothers like the S10e, which has a similar footprint, but it's heavier. On the front, we do have this beautiful display, 5.8 inches OLED display. On the left side, we do have the SIM card tray, and yes, this is only a nano SIM card tray. This phone is a dual SIM, but the second SIM is only an eSIM, so it's not really a physical SIM card that you can switch very easily. Nothing left on this side. On the right side, we do have the power button and the volume rocker. Nothing too special. I like that the Pixel phones all have this colored power button. On the back, Google symbol. We do have this, rather iPhone-ish camera bump with a single sensor and a flash. And right here in the middle, we do have the fingerprint sensor, which is texture-wise undistinguishable from the rest of the back, which is quite matte in finish, and I do like it, I'll have to admit. On the top, we do have a headphone jack and a microphone, and on the bottom, speaker, USB Type-C, and another microphone. The display, as I said, it's a 5.8 inches OLED display with a 1080p resolution and a pretty tall aspect ratio, a final pixel density of 443 pixel per inches. You do have some preset modes here. Natural, this is the most accurate one, and boosted as a more typical AMOLED saturated profile. I usually go with natural. You do have a pretty decent brightness. I have used it in bright conditions and it's quite enough. It's not the best, but it's okay. And because it's an OLED, you do have very good low brightness as well, including black levels, which are real black, not like on an LCD, in which the black colors are more or less gray. This new Pixel has a very interesting wallpaper app, and you do have quite a lot of interesting wallpapers, including some dynamic ones, like in Come Alive. You can see this one. It says watch the colors ebb and flow as your battery life changes. Or this one, in which you can make these circles move by tapping or tilting the device. This one is a wallpaper which moves to the music. Other than these, you do have quite a lot of wallpapers, as you can see, and it's quite interesting. These native wallpapers do have these dots within, and I presume these were made in order to make this camera cutout seem more indistinguishable. It's quite interesting overall, I might say. Samsung has chosen an interesting path as well. They have added some wallpapers which are very dark here in the top part. Therefore, you cannot really notice this cutout for the front camera. As far as CPU goes, we do have a Snapdragon 730G, which is not a huge update when thinking about the Pixel 3a, but it's at least an octa-core processor, which is quite capable. And as GPU, you do have the Adreno 618. You have 6 gigabytes of RAM, which is kind of enough right now in 2020. It's the exact same figure that the S10e has. And 128 gigabytes of internal storage with no expandability, out of which you can use about 110, as you can see right here. And compared to the Pixel 3a, for the first time on a mid-range Pixel, you do have UFS 2.1 internal storage and not eMMC like the previous 3a. As far as OS goes, of course, we do have Android 11, and that's about it. You will always get the most recent updates, that's for sure. In the battery department, we do have a 3140 milliamp hour battery with an 18-watt charger in the box, which is good. It's not the best, but this is a mid-range device, so you cannot really ask for more. As far as camera goes, on the back we do have a 12.2 megapixel sensor with a f1.7 aperture, and it has a 27mm wide lens. From a hardware perspective, well, it's nothing special, that's for sure, but Google Pixel devices really shine from a software perspective. So you do have this incredible HDR+. I'm not sure if you can choose not to use it because it's so good. You don't have too many options. I might say quite similar to an iPhone in this matter. You don't have lots of options for picture size or for manual modes or anything. It's quite a point and shoot experience, let's call it. You do have some modes like the night sight, which is of course incredible. I might want to add that this app, this Google camera app, is the updated one. I like it quite a lot compared to the previous one. You can choose the zoom level very easily here. Of course, you can zoom in a little more if you want to, and you can see that the zoom performance is quite impressive for a phone which has only one sensor. You do have the portrait mode, the typical camera mode. In video, here we do have slow motion, normal, and time-lapse, and it's quite impressive that it tells you exactly what to use each mode for. The same is valid for slow motion, good for lively groups, good for walking, good for busy spots, good for sunsets. It's quite interesting. And in video stabilization, you do have two options, and you can get a really nice explanation for each of them. It's quite impressive, and I like it. Video, of course, you can film in 4K, and that's about it. Only 4K 30, 4K 60 is not an option, as you can see. But of course, you do have Full HD 60 FPS. What's nice is that you can store videos in the HEVC format, which means that they will occupy a lot less space. And now it's quite important, given that Google Photos doesn't have the unlimited backup option anymore. You do have the panorama and the photosphere, nothing too special, but there are pretty decent implementations. Of course, the top feature is the night sight and the astrophotography, both of which are present on this Pixel 4a device. As a front camera, you do have an 8 megapixel sensor. Of course, you do have the typical stuff that any Pixel phone has, NFC, so you can very easily use it to add your cards to Google Pay and use it as a payment method. You have Bluetooth 5.1. As far as I've seen, you do not have Wi-Fi 6, which is quite a shame. I mean, we're in 2020, Wi-Fi 6 is already present in quite a few wireless routers, so I would have expected Google to add it. Probably the Pixel 5 has it, I'm not really sure. I guess that's about it from a specification perspective. I've used it as a daily driver, as you can see right here. I do have Magisk installed on it, so I unlocked the bootloader and I chose Magisk as my preferred root method. It works really nice, and if you install some modules, such as the Magisk Hide props config, you can very easily pass the safety net test, and you can very easily get your banking applications to run just fine, even if you're on a pretty custom ROM at the end of the day. I'm using the advanced charging controller, which is very useful and which lets me charge the device to my preferred values. I usually charge it to 80% at most, and I do have a Waze profile here in which I can connect it to a charger in the car and the phone will just idle. You do have here the prioritized battery idle mode. I really recommend this if you're looking to root any device, not only the Pixel 4a. I do have the systemless hosts activated because add away, and that's about it. Another thing that I added and which I don't like, this is one of the cons, for me at least, is this module, the Pixel 4 2-button navigation. For the Pixel lineup, at least for the latest models, Pixel now offers gesture navigation and 3-button navigation, and I'm quite used to this 2-button navigation. I like it quite a lot. This 3-button navigation is, well, I don't like it. It's the old school variant and I got used to newer things. And then gesture navigation, yeah, it's not my cup of tea. So if you want 2-button navigation, unfortunately the only option is to root it and to add this Magisk module, which is a shame. You can also see that I'm using the Nova launcher, which I like quite a lot. It's very customizable. You can have this very clear AMOLED friendly black background, and yeah, I like it quite a lot. The phone feels really good in day-to-day activity. You don't feel like you're on a mid-range phone, that's for sure. I didn't do any heavy gaming on it, but I'm sure it's capable of it, not on the highest settings probably. The battery life is, well, only okayish, but it's probably better than on the S10e. I'm not really sure, it's quite comparable. The camera, well, it's probably one of the best implementations that you'll ever find on any phone. The device is quite comfortable in hand. I like its shape. I like the fact that the display is not curved, but it's quite curved here. It has a curvature on the back, so it's easy to hold on. Indeed, the fingerprint scanner can be, well, difficult to find, but I do have a case, and the case really highlights it. It's not a problem anymore. I'll now try to give you a couple of honest pros and cons based on my usability, and afterwards we'll jump to conclusions straight away. As pros, I can give you the size. Indeed, it's one of the more compact devices that we've seen in the last couple of years. And in this, I'm not including the Xperia XZ1 Compact, which was exactly what I liked, but yeah, I guess it's a bit too old and you don't have any security updates anymore for that one. The camera, which is very good, and it's a definite advantage to this device. I believe it's one of the best cameras, or rather one of the best single camera devices out there, that's for sure. You do have an almost perfect custom ROM compatibility for the Pixel 4a, so Sunfish, its name given by Google. You do have the Graphene OS, which is a very privacy-oriented custom ROM, and you do have Calyx OS, but unfortunately as of now there is no Lineage OS build, which is a bit more friendly with the general apps that most people use and which require the GMS to be present. But these two are pretty good options, and if I'm not mistaken, Graphene OS and Calyx OS are only compatible with Pixel devices. Another feature that I like is the fingerprint scanner. I love these fingerprint scanners on the back, and I love the fact that you can swipe down to bring the notification shade. It's really interesting and it's really useful at all times. And one last thing that I like, and which I haven't mentioned in this review so far, is of course the headphone jack, which is a very, very important element for me, and which definitely makes it a very good daily driver. I have used in the past the Xperia 5, and the fact that it didn't have a headphone jack made me sell it. Now I'm thinking about the Xperia 5 too, but I don't like the fact that it's exactly like a TV remote. It's long like this, and it's narrower than this one, so yeah, you have a narrow keyboard, you have a very long device. I'm not really sure of that aspect ratio. This one is, well, okayish. It's a 19.5 by 9 aspect ratio, which is kind of on the brink for me. Given that I've discussed about this, I can tell you that the display is quite good as well. 1080p, it's more than enough. Very good brightness, good colors. Yeah, I guess it's all right. And now up to the cons of this device, which are quite a few. The camera is the first con. And yeah, you might wonder, how is the camera a con if it was already a pro of this device? Well, the simple fact that you only have one sensor is the biggest con in my book and in my view. I would have preferred an additional ultra-wide sensor. I'm not really fond of the telephoto lens, but ultra-wide, yeah, very useful nowadays. And at this point, you might ask, well, the Pixel 5 has an ultra-wide camera as well. Why didn't you choose that one? And the answer is, yeah, headphone jack is missing from that one. So, tough choices, tough choices. Dual SIM is another disadvantage. At the first sight, it might seem an advantage, but given that the second SIM is only an eSIM, it's a pretty big disadvantage for me, as I do have two physical SIMs, which unfortunately in my country you cannot really get your hands on an eSIM that easily. And of course, even if you would be able to do it, if you're a person like me, which changes the phones quite often, I believe it's not so pleasant to switch the eSIMs from one phone to another every month or so. The alternatives to this device, well, we do have the S10e, which has a typical dual SIM implementation and has an ultra-wide camera as well. The only disadvantage is that the device is quite old right now. It's about almost 2 years, let's call it. Of course, you do have an incredible Lineage OS support. You will probably get another couple of years out of that device without problems. But of course, Samsung still updates the S10e, so I guess that is a good alternative to the Pixel 4a. They are quite similar from most perspectives. As a second alternative, I cannot not mention the iPhone 12 mini, which is even smaller than this. I don't have it, but I do have an iPhone SE. I know that the iPhone 12 is just a little bit bigger than the iPhone SE, so it's probably somewhere in the middle, which I quite like. I'll have to be honest and tell you that these phones, which have a full display with no bezels or with very narrow ones, are my preferred devices right now, and I'm not really sure if I can go back to a device like this, which has huge bezels on top and bottom and even on the sides. But the iPhone 12 mini is a pretty good alternative if you want a device that you can use one-handed. And I only have two more cons, which are, well, not really cons, but are things which Google could have improved. One thing is the battery, which I told you it's only about 3,100 milliamp hours. Yeah, it's okay, but they could have incremented it a bit to about 3,500, I guess. The device isn't the slimmest around, so adding another millimeter or so would have made customers more happy, I guess. Nowadays the thickness doesn't really matter that much as long as you get a good battery life. And one last point, which in my view is a con, is the availability. This device is very, very hard to get your hands on. The stock was very low, very similar to what's going on right now with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and the RTX 3000 series and so forth. Nowadays we're in a period where a lot of products are launched, but the stocks aren't there, just aren't there. And this was the case with the 4A as well. Right now we're in December, so the stocks are a little bit better right now. You can get your hands on it, but still the availability on a broad scale, just like with Samsung devices, it's just not on par. You cannot really find it everywhere, and you cannot really find it discounted that easily. Yeah, I guess that's it. As a conclusion, I can say that the device is very nice. It's one of the few devices that I believe I will continue to use as a daily driver, but I'm not really sure if I'll still use the stock ROM, which I find quite bloated. It has quite a lot of packages which I don't like. This is probably the last con. I haven't really thought about it beforehand, but yeah, even Google now adds a lot of packages. And if you're a privacy oriented person, this might bother you a little bit at least. But of course there are the custom alternatives, so it's not really a huge issue. It's a very compact device with a very strong hardware, even though it's not a flagship grade hardware. And it's definitely one of the best compact daily drivers for 2020, that's for sure. I'll try to film a comparison video between this one and some other compact phones that I have, so stay tuned for that video. If you like this video, please press the thumbs up button. If you'd like to see more similar videos in the future, also press the subscribe button, which will be displayed right here in the bottom left part. Of course, if you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. There you'll also find the links to my social media and to my Patreon accounts. This was Mike the Tech Savvy. Thank you so much once again. Stay safe, guys. Bye.